So, what's up, world? This is America. My name is Hobson McCain. I'm a recent Lehigh grad, 2018. I'm here with my boy Mark. You want to introduce yourself?
My name is Margaret Redmond. I'm a 2018 Lehigh University grad, 2014 Trotwood Madison High School grad, and I'm a political science major, as is my boy Hobson, and this is America.
Yeah, so basically, what our show is going to do is we're going to talk about all the issues that we feel that the news might not touch on as much or might not touch on in the right way. We're going to talk about them, keep them real, and basically give the perspective of the people. We're going to try to keep it 100% facts. We're not going to be spreading no fake news out here, so stay tuned. Basically, we're going to break the show down into 4 segments. We're going to have a economic segment, international news segment, fake news segment, and a social commentary segment. So, with that said, follow us on Twitter. This is America 13. We'll have Facebook pages up soon. You can follow us on YouTube and all that stuff. But let's get right into it. So for our economic segment, we're talking about, if you guys haven't heard, Donald Trump has recently imposed tariffs on 3 of our biggest allies, Canada, Mexico, and the EU, European Union, as well as one of our not so big allies, China. So obviously this has a lot of, domestic economic implications as well as international economic implications. Mark, if you want to start and go ahead and get us started on that.
Well, first things first, I would like to point out that I don't believe that Donald Trump himself was attempting to go against any trade agreements or, rub anybody the wrong way with what he was doing. I feel like the purpose of these new tariffs on these foreign goods, basically, is to help American businesses. And I feel like that's the purpose that he believes that this law serves, that these new tariffs are going to serve. But I don't think that he's understanding the ramifications, internationally of his actions. This is not a business. The U.S. is not a business. You can't run it as such. You have to focus on, policy and understand how everything works and how policies hold the countries together. The intricacies of these communications.
Yeah, well, I'm going to start this off hot, and I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you on that one. I think DT knew what he was doing. I think he knows exactly how it was going to affect Angela Merkel and other leaders in the EU. I think he did think a side effect would be it would benefit American businesses. Obviously, increased tariffs of imports is going to, make domestically produced products a little bit more appealing to the American consumer. But at the same time, he's been president for a year, so I feel like after a year being advised by some people who have been in politics, international politics for all their lives, I think it's kind of far-fetched to say that he didn't know or intend for these tariffs to rub people the wrong way, especially with 3 of our biggest allies, and further, I think, with the North American Free Trade Agreement and the World Trade Organization, implementing tariffs with people in those organizations, you have to prove that there's a national security risk in order to implement those tariffs. So with Canada and Mexico, especially Canada, it's kind of hard to see how they're posing a national security risk, as well as with our allies in the EU. Now, the Trump administration said that it was due to the fact that because they were raising our aluminum and steel prices, we weren't able to, or we wouldn't be able to produce our own tanks and jets at a low enough cost. Now, that seems like a stretch to me.
If that's justification for it, like if that is, their justification for going against the trade agreements, because that is indeed what they did. I am not saying that I think that Donald Trump had anybody else's best interest in mind.
Okay.
I believe that he himself, like the focus of what he was trying to do was to help American businesses. And he did that with no regard to, the other ramifications think that he really understands how policy works. I don't
Well,
think that he understands that these trade agreements are in place for a reason, and you can't just if Obama could have just decided that he was going to tax everybody else and make our goods, the cheapest version, the cheapest available product, then he would have done that because that sounds like that a little kid could do. If we make their products more expensive, then ours will be cheaper. It's pretty simple,
yeah,
but because of the way that the trade agreements are set up, because of the fact that these are our allies, things don't just work that way, like you said, and especially because we have to have a reason. Like there has to be a national security risk for us to break these agreements. And in a way, he's breaking the agreements because I don't believe that us trying to get aluminum has anything to do with our military. I don't think that that's a big deal. I feel like we can fund that. I don't think that's enough of a national security risk for him to break trade agreements.
yeah, no, I 100% agree. But let's assume you're right and that Donald didn't. Let me be more respectful. President Trump did not. Uh, that hurt. But President Trump did not mean to rub people the wrong way with these tariffs. Let's say that that's the case, and that his only intentions was with business. Then let's look at this from a business perspective. I
Okay.
got some statistics over here. So for businesses that use imported steel and aluminum,
Right.
obviously the prices of production for them will increase. So one of the big companies that uses a lot of aluminum is the beer company. They say that the 10% aluminum tax is going to add an additional $347.7 million in cost to producing beers. Now,
Yes.
for the average American, that's really only like, probably about 10, 15 cents per beer. But as
Enough.
these, yeah, I mean, for college, as we know, college students, 10, 15 cents, that's a good little portion of our dollar. But
Of course. But you only got so many of those.
yeah, exactly. But as these tariffs persist and as this tit for tat um, implementing of tariffs on each other, because the EU, Canada, and Mexico have already started drafting tariffs that they're gonna launch against the United States. So as these increase, it's only going to cause a rise of inflation, a decrease in consumer spending, and ultimately economic recession. And not I don't want to use recession, that's a big word, but economic downslide.
But to say a recession is a possibility because of these actions that we're taking as a country, that's too far fetched to believe. We just came out of one because of manufacturing, because we had companies moving manufacturing jobs to overseas because it's cheaper, and that way they were taking away the jobs here. Like I live in Dayton, Ohio, and for us, we had a big plant called General Motors where
Mm-hmm.
my mother worked in. She got laid off. Luckily, she had a job, and not she had a job, but she had her degree, so she was able to move on afterwards. But that's a big deal in places like this. So I understand like him trying to help them, but at the same time, it's just not the way that he went about it. Is not beneficial for us.
Yeah, and further, I think if you look at the tariffs that the Bush administration administered in 2002, that led to a loss of 200,000 jobs, 200,000 American jobs. So, and then if you look at the automobile industry, the European Union imports, countless cars to America, and as well as China and other different Japanese automobile industries. So these tariffs, or there have been proposed tariffs in response to the responsive tariffs the EU is implementing on us. The Trump administration has proposed that next they're going to start imposing tariffs on the automobile industry in Europe, and first of all, that's going to be crippling to economies like Germany, where importing BMW and Volkswagen cars is a huge part of their GDP. So that's going to be crippling our allies, and Yeah, it's starting a
Or
trade war, and
more
that
than that,
and a trade war between allies is not good, especially if you look at it from the perspective of one of our enemies.
counterproductive.
Yeah, if you look at it from the perspective of one of our enemies, let's say North Korea, let's say Syria, who are actually about to meet in a few weeks, this provides opportunities for them to not only ally themselves, but also interact with a weakened United States and its allies. So if the EU is, economically downridden or whatever, it just makes them more vulnerable to possible, economic attacks or even physical attacks on their country. That it just makes it that much more devastating. So I think with the world tension where it is right now, these tariffs were, a big risk for the payoff that I think that it could cause. So
The more the more that we talk about it, the more risks that I see, not just for the U.S. but for, like you said, for countries abroad. Because if we're imposing tariffs on products, not specific products, but materials that go into products.
yeah,
Now, if let's say there's a small business, and let's say there's a small beer company in the U.S. and we raise aluminum prices by 10 cents for them, like 10 cents per unit, they might not be able to handle that the same way a Budweiser might.
exactly.
So, in a way, like, you're losing people jobs, possibly. Like, let's talk about possibilities. That's what we're doing now. We're talking about things that could happen. And theoretically, it's not far fetched to think that the rise in production costs could cripple small businesses,
Yeah, and
especially
small
especially
businesses aren't producing their own aluminum and steel. So you know, um, I guess maybe you could say that they should buy their aluminum and steel domestically. Um,
we can raise our prices too. That's how
yeah,
business
but that's
works.
that, that's
Right.
when the only place you can get aluminum and steel is in America, then by definition, economic supply and demand, basic economics says that with limited suppliers and an increase in demand, there's going to be an increase in prices. So, this just it's not shaping up well. It's not looking like a great decision from the Trump administration. It seems a little bit impulsive, in my opinion, which has been a trademark of the Trump administration. And I think actually thus far their impulsivity has worked out for them. If you look at the economy is undeniably up. Jobs are looking good right now. Um, the stock market is up, but at the same time, when you look at where as soon as the tariffs for China were announced, the stock market took a huge plummet. People lost millions that day. So as soon as these tariffs are implemented, and further on July 1st, when Canada's tariffs that they're implementing on us, when those are put into effect, I think we could start to see a huge drop in the stock market, a huge drop in GDP growth overall, and a rise in inflation that could be detrimental to not only our economy, but you know, economies in Canada, Mexico, and the EU. So
That is true.
it's looking rough for our
It's looking
guys.
slow. It's looking slow for the little guys. The big businesses seem like the big businesses will be okay
And
because
and that's another interesting thing is that it hasn't been officially investigated. The Russia probe. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But there have been talks that President Trump's his presidency itself is a conflict of interest for the nation because the you
it's
know
a business.
yeah, he's a businessman, and that's why he was elected. That's why people voted for him, is because they believe that his business
Savvy.
knowledge, savvy, we'll call it, would help America raise their GDP and bring our economy back. Our economy was on the rise for the past 8 years before Trump. We're not going to talk about that. That's in the past. But
That's what
we yeah,
unemployment and the economy. How much of that is Donald's doing? That's another topic
it's
of
yeah,
the same.
different topic for a different day. But
Another topic.
Donald Trump and his family have undoubtedly benefited from the past year of him being in the presidency. So, whe- whether that's intentional or not is going to be hard to prove in court. But the fact that it has is an undeniable fact. You can look at this with Ivanka Trump and her ventures in Russia and China that have been growing. I don't want to say exponentially because I don't know the actual numbers, but they have been growing. Uh, and I'm sure if you look at the numbers, Trump and little Trump Jr. have been making a lot of money as well while Daddy's been in the office. So, it, it yeah, yeah. So it's an interesting dynamic, and it remains to be seen how far Trump will be allowed to go with this. Um, just because it seems like just like you said, he's not working with everyone's best interests at heart. He's working with a select few. The upper 1%, we'll say, the big business owners. He definitely has their interest at heart, but the small business owners and the everyday American, I think it's hard to say that his decisions are made with us in mind, if that makes sense.
And that's ironic considering his base.
Yeah, 100% ironic considering his base and considering why they voted for him. Next topic, we're gonna go into international news. Gonna jump right into it. You know what I'm saying? We don't have commercials here. We don't have no advertisements, not yet. So, all right, for international news, we're actually gonna talk about Edward Snowden. And you guys might think that's a little bit outdated. Edward Snowden WikiLeaks was in 2013. We were juniors in high school when this first started happening. But it's been released that actually only 1% of the documents that Edward Snowden took from the government have actually been released to the public. So the NSA and Homeland Security are concerned that the problems that Edward Snowden has caused are going to be happening for the foreseeable future. So if you want to touch on that a little bit more, and we can elaborate.
I think that for the viewers, it is important to understand that Edward Snowden himself, what he did was illegal, despite the fact that people want to see the documents. That what we learned from the documents was valuable information to us. We only learned the information from 1% of the documents, and that's if you read all of the documents that he leaked. And I'm 100% sure that none of us watching have. Like, I know that I maybe have seen a couple. I won't even say I've seen 5 of the documents, and that's not even close to the amount that he released. So to say that 1% of the documents that he stole have been released is kind of scary, because we know what was in the 1% that he released, as far as like them, watching what we're doing, as far as the cameras and all of that, like them monitoring us and like our privacy being invaded. That's something that we learned from the 1%. The 99% at this point is a security risk for the U.S. because we don't know. Well, I'm not going to say we don't know. I'm going to say that I personally don't know what's in those 99% of those documents. But whoever lost them knows.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were, I'm not going to call them hidden, because the government has the right, and sometimes it's necessary for them to keep things confidential for a while. Like, the way that the law is set up, every document that he stole, from the date that it was published, from the date that it was written, 50 years from there, the government has to release it. They have a website called the CIA Vault where they release documents after 50 years because it is like law that they have to do so. The fact that he stole documents that were so recent and so new, like, that in itself creates the security issue, because now he himself is in Russia. Snowden fled the U.S. and actually made it to Russia. I don't know how he did that, but with computers, and it's probably difficult to track somebody that hacks computers for a living. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind when you think of them trying to find them.
Yeah, and so I got
He's in Russia.
so I got the numbers. He actually stole 9 to 10,000 documents from the U.S. government, and when he released them to WikiLeaks, there was he gave them conditions saying that if any of these documents you guys can release all of these documents as long as they don't harm anybody or put like national privacy at risk. And according to the journalists and all that, like you said, Edward Snowden's in Russia, so he doesn't have any control over whether or not these documents that could possibly be harming people are being released or whether they're not. But you, I just said that just so the viewers would see his intentions, because a little bit of the reason that we're talking about him is just kind of to identify whether or not should be seen as a hero or seen as a vigilante or and like a guy who is just seeking glory, just trying to screw over the American government, basically. So I believe that his intentions were good, but I think it's hard to release that many documents to journalists and expect them to have the discretion to be able to discern between what is beneficial for the American people to know and what could be detrimental. Because they're talking about there's information where the U.S. and British have information from cables that have telephone and internet records from around the world. So it's like that information. Do Americans really need to know that? Is that a matter of Americans' personal security? I think Verizon releasing phone records to the American government is a violation of our privacy directly. So I think I think it was good for the American people to know that, so that when they're having their phone conversations, they know that there is a possibility that the NSA or somebody is listening. These records do have the possibility of being shared with government officials. So, but with international surveillance and things like that, the American government doesn't need every Betsy Joe and Tom Billy Bob to know everything that they're doing, because we don't. Not everybody studies politics. Not everybody studies international relations and espionage and all that stuff. I don't know the ramifications of a lot of the espionage that America does. But at the same time, if I did, who is that helping? Like, that's not helping the American government do anything. That's not helping protect us from espionage from other countries who might not have our best interest at heart. So if these documents are releasing how America is surveilling its enemies, how America is preparing ahead of time for things that could be happening in the future, and how they surveil the world, I think that's detrimental to the American public overall. Just because that is a matter of national security. That is a matter of the American government trying to protect the American people. Predicting terrorist attacks. Like they were monitoring Bitcoin users to support counterterrorism, combat narcotics, and money laundering. That all sounds fantastic to me. We don't need narcotics, any more narcotics in America than we have already. We don't need any more money laundering than we have already. And we sure don't need any more terrorism, because we have enough domestic terrorism to share with the world. So
more domestic terrorism than anything.
Yeah, exactly. So everything there's no reason that the terrorists need to know how we are supporting counterterroristic. I can't think of the word, but you know what I'm trying to say. Yeah, counterterroristic measures.
With Snowden, the question that you asked, whether he's a hero or a villain, for the most part, it really boils down to what side you're on. And because when it comes down to the privacy thing, where it's companies, it's like Verizon monitoring us. Verizon probably didn't like those documents came out, so to them, he's violating their privacy as a business because those are private documents. Those were confidential documents. They weren't supposed to be for the public. So he violated their privacy.
Mm-hmm.
But in that specific instance, it's kind of justified because he's shedding light on them violating our privacy. So in that specific respect, he's somewhat of a hero because he did the right thing by letting the American people know that they were being surveilled without their knowledge and without their consent. But, like you said before, there are certain documents that are national security risks. We don't know what's in those documents. And I'm almost positive that he hasn't went through and read every single word of those documents. If you said there's 10,000 of those, I don't know if he's read 10,000 documents.
I don't know a person alive who would be reading 10,000 documents. I'm sure there is one, but
that's true. But the way he worded, if he asked them to be confidential, if he asked them to be use their own discretion, then I feel like that means that he doesn't have his own grasp of what should be used and what shouldn't be used. If he was giving them that type of leeway, if he gave them all the 1,000 documents, if he didn't take any documents out when he gave them to them, that means that he doesn't know everything that's in there. Because if he did, and he cared about the well-being of America, then there are certain documents that he would have taken out of there. That he would have taken out.
And just so you guys know, Edward Snowden, before he exiled himself to Russia, was an NSA contractor. So, he had all the ins and outs of what the NSA was doing. He was one of the best hackers the NSA had. So,
but I wouldn't even call him. The way that we see him right now isn't. We don't use the correct term for him. The correct term for someone like Edward Snowden is a whistleblower.
Yeah.
Somebody that works for a company and then sees errors in the company's ways and sheds light on them. Now, the fact that he works for the government made him a traitor to the U.S. because he saw errors in the way that the U.S. was moving and the way that the U.S. was conducting its operations. And he went against the U.S.'s option. He went against the U.S.'s
trust. I mean, yeah. When you're an NSA employee, there's a certain amount of confidentiality that you have to maintain, and that's about being any government employee. Yeah, no, 100% he did. And right now he's in Russia and he's facing. If he comes back to the States, he's facing upwards of 30 years in prison, and he's 31, but he's not coming back, and Russia's not going to extradite him. So,
why would they? He can have some stuff that can help him.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think Edward Snowden had a plan, and I don't know if he thought it out all the way through. Just because, like you said, with 10,000 documents, and leaving that up to the judgment of journalists, especially American journalists, that's kind of. It's kind of shaky. It's kind of ambiguous, and it leaves too much up to chance, especially with documents with such sensitive information in them.
Sensitive for anybody to know about it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So I don't understand why we think that everybody should know about everything. We heard about one instance with our privacy being invaded, and now we're assuming that all 10,000 documents have something to do with the American people. And I just don't believe that to be true. And that's why they need those documents. Yeah, no, they need.
I think they need to keep most of them under wraps.
Reporting that he was able to sneak those out of there.
Yeah, I like the fact that I know that FBI agent Joe might be looking at me through my my little FaceTime camera right now. What's up, FBI agent Joe?
You're not doing nothing.
I'm not doing anything felonious. So. Look on, brother.
If you were making a bomb, they would be knocking at your door.
And I think that's justified. If people,
there's pros and cons to it.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to all kinds of surveillance. So the fact that they're it sounds bad saying they're watching us, because I really don't think that the American government is sitting out here monitoring everyday Americans. They're monitoring people that are at their risks. Like they've been marked as a risk.
All the time.
Yeah. So again, you guys let us know what you think. You guys can comment on our YouTube videos, Facebook posts, Twitter, respond to us on Twitter, whatever. Let us know what you guys think about these issues. With that, we're going to move on to what is my favorite segment of the show, the fake news segment. We actually have 2 instances of fake news from this past week. The first one, a little bit more serious, and the second one, you'll see. But for the first one, we're going to talk about the fact that there's been rumors going around that the American government has misplaced 1,500 immigrant kids.
I'm getting y'all news from Facebook.
Yeah,
Stop it.
don't you gotta stop just reading the titles of these articles and click on them because I'm not gonna lie, I fell a victim to it when I first saw it. 1,500 kids lost. How do you lose 1,500 kids? Like,
It's not outlandish, doesn't it?
yeah,
It
it
sounds
just it
pretty.
just sounds it sounds just completely asinine, just like wild. Like just something you would.
Okay. You might should
It's
find
like
those
how
stories.
did we not know about this? And then upon further investigation, turns out 90% of these 1,500 kids was placed with their families
With their families inside of the United States.
inside of the U.S. So to,
Inside of here.
when they say that they lost them, it means that they haven't been in contact with them for a little bit of time. I'll let you know the ORR is supposed to call the families that the kids are placed with after 3 months after they're placed. They say that they called them, there was no response, and they never called back.
You know what that means, Javi?
What does that mean, Mark?
Is that those kids are just undocumented. There's a lot of undocumented people in the United States. And in their case, because they came here illegally alone, I'm assuming that there was someone here waiting for them illegally. So it doesn't make sense for that person to attempt to file paperwork for a child when they themselves
Don't have
do
no
not
paperwork.
get paperwork. It doesn't make sense logically. Somebody's going to get caught up, and either you're going to get deported or your child's going to get deported. They're
And
not going to keep you together because one of you is a U.S. citizen at this point, and the other one isn't.
so and now me and Mark are um, critics of the American government and how a lot of things have gone down in the past.
And books.
Yeah, we read too much and we know too much to say that they've done everything right. Now, this particular instance, we're just pointing out that DT did
Well,
not cause 1,500 kids to just disappear off the face of the earth. Like, they're still here. They're in the United States. And
90%.
90% of
Talking
them.
about the 90.
Now, yeah, we're just talking about the 90% now. Because the other 10%, there is a little bit of concern that we should have for them. Because in 2014, 8 children were released by U.S. immigration forces to labor human traffickers. And they were working on a poultry farm in guess where? Ohio. So, Mark, be careful out there.
I
Um,
didn't know that was exactly. I probably heard about it and didn't know that was the backstory.
yeah, so like
I heard that was
the
kids.
American government hasn't been handling all these cases with pristine efficiency or anything like that. So with the 10% of kids who weren't placed with their families, I think there is a legitimate cause of concern for them. Just because the background checks for these sponsors that the kids are placed with, I don't know if these kids are introduced to these people before they're released to them. I know that the conditions that the kids are in before are terrible. Not they're not they're yeah they're not living in 5-star hotels by any means. So I'm sure they're eager to leave, but going to people that you don't know, not familiar with, in a country that you've never been in, is traumatic, and it's not setting these children up for success. So
I don't even think that the kids have a say so in those type of scenarios, and I feel like that's just my opinion. I haven't been there inside of those circles. I haven't been in the room, but I'm assuming that. Actually, I can't even say that because if you're a kid, let's say that you don't have anybody waiting for you when you get here, then any family member, any not family member, but anybody that comes and wants to give you a fresh start, you probably would jump on that opportunity.
yeah,
At the same time,
you're a
you
kid
need
though.
as an American government, you need to understand that everybody does not have these kids' best interests at heart, and that is where the issues come in. That's where for that last 10%, that's where the worries come in because we're not exactly sure that those kids are safe. Now, even the kids that are with their families, are going through the best time. Are you froze?
No, I was just listening, bro.
The
I be
kids that are going,
focused.
yeah, all right, man. The kids that are with their families, they're safe in a respect. Like I'm safe with my family, you're safe with yours. Now, there's obviously some people that weren't safe with theirs, but that's a different issue in itself. The fact that these kids were, the 90% were put with their family is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's the American government doing the
That we're
best they
worried
can.
about, with 10% that we're worried about, we have the rights to be worried about, and everybody should be worried about because we haven't heard back from these 10%. And the excuse that we gave the 90% that were, released to their family is not available with those 10%. Those 10% that are state sponsored, that are state like sponsors, that are from the United States, they have their paperwork, or they wouldn't be able to come in and get these kids.
Yeah.
So there's no reason for them to have these kids undocumented. There's no excuse for them to not be answering these phone calls, and that's what my issue is.
Yeah,
I
100%.
understand that it is kind of the immigration service's fault because that they're in this situation, but at the same time, with the 1,500 kids, they did pretty. That's what we consider. They put these kids, 90% of them, the vast majority, were put with their families. And the last 10% were put with, people that passed background checks and yada yada yada. Like they didn't just get these kids people off on the street. At the same time, keep harping on it. We need to know where these kids are. Like we need to have tabs on them. They're not going to be family members, and they're not from the United States. Because if anything happens to them, and they're with somebody that's not family, and this kid, if this person is their guardian, if this person doesn't report and something happened to them, then we will never hear about it ever, ever. And
Yeah.
the kid will just disappear off the face of the earth. And that's what worries are coming from.
Yeah. So, and I'm just gonna elaborate a little bit on, your point about the 90% and the fact that, I think it's safe to assume that they're okay with their families, even though they haven't been made contact with. So basically, the ORR and Immigration Customs Enforcement have just recently come to an agreement that adults that come to the border to pick up these kids who are coming into the United States unaccompanied are now subject to, background checks and submitting paperwork that could end up getting them deported. So, as a parent,
Uh,
you know, if you've already gotten your kid, like these 90% have, to continue checking in with the ORR and immigration services, it's kind of counterproductive to you staying in America. Just because the process of getting a green card is very, very long. The process of becoming an American citizen is very, very long. So,
People don't know that either. I
yeah,
think that it's just you just apply for it like you go get a passport or something. It's not that simple. Like we be on Twitter and we'll see 18-year-old girls or 22-year-old girls talking about their parents just now getting their citizenship.
yeah, and
That's
been here
like
for 20
I'm assuming
years.
that these children, like their kids, are from here. Their kids were born in the United States, but their parents weren't legal until they're halfway through college. That's the type of time that these people are dealing with, and that's why people come here illegally. So,
Yeah, and
for
that's
the
why
people
they're
that are
not
watching,
checking in. So,
I'm not ignoring them coming here illegally, but understand the situation that they're in. It's not that simple. It's not as cut and dry. It's just moving to a different neighborhood.
yeah,
It's not
no,
like that.
100%. And so, but just like you said, it is concerning that the sponsors who aren't related to these children and are just supposedly taking them in out of the kindness of their hearts. These are American citizens. These are people that should theoretically be willing to stay into contact with ORR and
Sure.
immigration services and give them checkups on how these kids are doing. So the fact that they haven't checked in is a little bit concerning. So let's send prayers up for those 150 kids that are not with their families and hope that everything's all good with them. But that's the first example of our fake news. 1,500 kids did not disappear off the face of the earth. They are here in the United States, and most of them are probably okay.
90% with family.
Yeah, 90% are with their moms and pops, or grandmas and uncles. So, that's the best the American government can do. I don't think people should be trying to bash Donald Trump's immigration policies for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for that. If you want to bash his policies, bash him for
Like he
something
did.
else. Yeah, but not for losing 1,500 kids. That's bogus and it's absolutely asinine. Now, Mark, do you wanna take over for the second fake news portion?
Okay. Now, for the second fake news segment, we have to go back a couple of days to Game 1 of the NBA Finals.
Rough one.
I am from Dayton, Ohio. I live in Trotwood, Ohio, 2 hours from Cleveland, and that's if I take my time to get there. Game was very important to us. We watched it intently. We watched it with great focus up until the last 30 seconds of the game. We were down 1 point. I remember these details. I remember the details. We were down 1 point. George Hill was at the free throw line. J.R. Smith and LeBron James were at the top of the key. They weren't in the paint. They were at the top of the key waiting. No, actually, J.R. Smith might have been down there.
Yeah, J.R. Smith was on the block.
J.R. Smith was definitely down there. He was on the block. He had to be for the rest of the story to go the way that it did. George Hill sinks his first free throw. I look at his face. They close in. They do a close up. George Hill does not look confident. He does not look confident at all. He proceeds to do what everybody knew he was going to do. He missed the second free throw, but miraculously, J.R. Smith, not the tallest guy on the court,
Saved the game, right?
not the strongest guy on the court, but he got this.
He got the heart.
Heart.
That's it, though.
J.R. Smith grabs the rebounds. He gets higher than I ever seen anybody do. He got bunnies. He got up there. Grabs the ball. Runs to the three-point line. Looks at LeBron James. Doesn't give him the ball. Dribbles all the way to the sideline. LeBron James says, pass the ball over there. He passes the ball. Time runs out, and the game is tied. J.R. Smith, Skip Bayless, and, our boy Shannon Sharp.
Uncle Shannon.
Analyzed Uncle Shannon. They analyzed the tape. J.R. Smith, what did he say? What was his? What were his
After
exact
the
words?
buzzer went off,
Mm-hmm.
LeBron asked JR, "What were you doing?" JR said, "I thought we were ahead."
Now, fake news. This is the fake news. I'll follow J.R. Smith on Twitter because I'm from Ohio and J.R. Smith's a pretty entertaining guy. He had the audacity
The
to
nerve.
go on Twitter, the gall to go on Twitter and say, if I thought that we were ahead, if I thought we had the lead, I would have stood still and let them foul me. Junior decided that he was going to run away from everybody. No. I don't understand. Like, it looks to me like he believed that they had the lead and he was trying to run the clock out because he didn't want to go to the free throw line. Because he just watched George Hill miss a free throw. He understands that free throws are missable, and it would be best if the Warriors didn't get the ball back, so he tried to run away from everybody. I know that he wasn't trying to help the team in that way, as far as, like, getting more points. He didn't think they were down.
Nah, he definitely didn't think they was down.
Because he would have shot the ball. He couldn't have possibly thought it was tied, or he would have, tried to get a shot off. So the only other possible alternative is that he thought they were ahead. J.R. Smith, you're a liar, you're a fraud, fake news.
And I'd like to just point out that later, a couple days later, in an interview, JR did say, after a couple days of thinking about it, I have to say I really just don't know what I was thinking. I don't know if I knew we were ahead or if I didn't know we were ahead. Now, JR, how after 2 days of looking at this film, you don't know if you knew you was ahead or not, JR? JR,
He don't know if you can read his mouth.
Bruh,
He don't know if you can read his lips.
JR, come on, JR, you know better than that. We're not dumb.
You a grown man.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Just fake news everywhere, man. So that's closing out our fake news segment. We're gonna go on, transition into our social commentary. This is usually gonna be our most serious or most passionate probably segment. Just because it's a little bit baffling that we are still dealing with problems like the one that we're about to address. Um, so this past week, there was an individual by the name of Shrell Lewis, who was in his spare time a barber who liked to give advice to the youth when he was cutting their hair. Good Samaritan. He stopped on the side of a highway to to help some other drivers move some debris off the highway, for the safety of the drivers, and was struck by a red pickup truck. 18-year-old by the name of Matthew Martin was driving this pickup truck. And unfortunately, Shrell Lewis died later on at the hospital. And even more unfortunately, this is not the news story.
That's
Um,
not part.
the news story is
That
that Matthew Martin, after the collision, was in contact with one of his buddies or one of his friends, and they asked him a couple questions about what happened and who he hit. Um, and in response to who he hit, he said, "Some nigger." Oh, just some nigger.
just something.
Yeah. So, and then his friend went further and asked, "Did the guy die on impact?" He didn't. He died at the hospital. But I guess Mr. Matthew Martin, an 18-year-old, just graduated from high school, I'm assuming, or was a senior, soon to be, said that he said, "Yes, sir," with a laughing emoji in response to, "Did he die on impact?" "Yes, sir," with a laughing emoji. And then said, "No, actually, he died at the hospital." Was very concerned about his car, though. Made the comment, "Oh, I feel bad for the family, but I'm gonna have to replace like two windshields." So, I mean, I feel like there's not really much to sit on with this. If you want to go ahead and do your, you know, let me know what you're thinking, bro. Let me know what you're thinking.
I gotta first things first. I gotta watch what I say, watch how I say these things because this is a very sensitive subject, and I might get upset speaking about it. Now, Charles Lewis, he was a good guy. He was trying to help out other drivers on the road. He was trying to clear debris off of the street. That to me seems like something that everybody should be able to appreciate. Another human being trying to help other human beings. What's the kid's name that hit him again?
Matthew Martin.
Matthew Martin. Okay, Mr. Martin. I have seen with my own eyes people stop their cars for cats, dogs, birds. I've even seen people stop for raccoons and opossums. People don't even like those animals, but they'll stop for them because they don't like to take lives. You don't want to hear your car run something over. You don't want to deal with that because obviously there's damages to your car and the fact that you're taking a life. Now, what bothers me more than this kid, because I'm 22 years old and he's 4 years younger than me. I remember being 18. I remember being a senior in high school. You don't know much about the world. You don't know how it works, but somehow, some way, he found it humorous to take this man's life because of the color of his skin. I'm saying that he found it humorous because of the color of his skin, because of the way that he responded. Had we not found these messages, had he not said that he could hit some nigger, then I wouldn't have any reason to feel any type of way about this young man. I'll talk about I'm not going to talk about his family and friends. I'm going to talk about a specific post from his girlfriend in a second. But I just don't understand how you can justify taking a life in any respect. Me personally, I understand, as a black man, I understand, stress. I understand being frustrated at the way that the world is. I understand a lot of things, but I would not ever reform unless it's self-defense. Now, Mr.
Wait,
Davis was
can
on
you
the road
repeat
clearing
that last
debris.
part
Mr.
just one
Martin,
time? It glitched out a little bit. Repeat that last part one time.
I said that I don't think that it's under any circumstances should you be able to take a human life or something to that effect. I can't remember exactly what I said. But Mr. Davis was on the road removing debris, trying to help people, and Mr. Martin was behind the wheel of his car. Mr. Martin, I am 100% sure, saw Mr. Davis on the earlier. Didn't see it. They didn't see any skid marks. They didn't see any, burnt rubber. They didn't see any signals that Mr. Martin attempted to brake before he hit Mr. Davis. And then he showed no remorse after hitting. He obviously didn't stop his car because he didn't know that Mr. Davis was not dead on impact, that he died at the hospital. Maybe he said that later on in the messages, but I was a little frustrated, reading them. I kind of stopped once I saw just something. I didn't want to see what else he said because to me, it was relevant. There's no reason for me to continue to hear what he has to say after he can take a life and then write it off as just because some nigga. That to me is a sign of someone that has no faith in society. But this is another separate issue that I'd like to point out. It's not the exact same situation, but there's a young man, young rapper K. K was in an altercation. I'll say. K was in the car at Chick-fil-A. There was an altercation inside of the vehicle, and someone inside the vehicle ended up getting shot, and they left the scene. K himself is on trial for capital murder. He didn't hold the gun. He was just there. He never touched the weapon. He wasn't behind the wheel. He was in the back seat. He was just there at the scene of the crime, and because he was there at the scene of the crime, and he was actively participating in, I guess what was going on there, he himself is sitting in the jail cell today, waiting trial for capital murder. Now, Mr. Martin had the opportunity to not only prevent the man from dying, but prevent him from having any type of harm whatsoever. This entire situation could have been avoided had Mr. Martin decided to not hit his car. I don't understand how the justice system will allow kids in the jail cell right now, and Mr. Martin to be sitting at home with his family, or going to school, or doing whatever he's supposed to be doing while he just took his life and disregarded it because that man was black.
Yeah.
The justice system. I'm not going to say that because the person that hit Mr. Davis was white, that he's not in jail. But to me, I believe that if the roles were reversed and a black person ran over a white person, so I just ran over some white dude, and those messages came out, then the police would have went to his door that day. Within 30 minutes, he would have been arrested.
You can see it actually.
You can. He killed somebody, and he admitted to it. He admitted to killing this man. How is he not in prison?
I mean,
The worst part of it is that I don't believe he's going to get a murder charge. I believe that worse will get vehicular manslaughter, and that's if he gets.
And the crazy thing to me is that Mr. Martin hasn't even been charged with vehicular manslaughter. He hasn't been charged with anything yet, despite the fact that it's obvious that he hit a man with his car, and then the man died.
We can't prove it with intentionally, but we can prove that.
Yeah, they can't. I mean, it's hard for me to. I know that they might not be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it was not that it was intentional, and I understand that it's hard to prove it in a court of law, but vehicular manslaughter, I feel like he should have at least been charged with it by now,
right.
And
already.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that Shaw Lewis was 31 years old, and he had obviously lived 31 years of life. He had known how to cross a street. I'm sure he had crossed streets before, and if he's clearing out debris, I'm sure that he wasn't ducking and dodging cars to get to the debris and doing front flips trying to throw the debris off the road. I'm sure he waited until there was a break in the traffic to go and grab this debris. So it's hard for me to say this without just straight up condemning Mr. Martin, but I'm just gonna say it because that's what we're gonna do on the show. You know,
Yeah, I think
I
he's being
think he did it on
devastated.
purpose. Honestly, I think he did it on purpose. And
I don't want to.
I don't know if
Yeah, I don't want to hear that
he
he
I don't think
did
he
it.
left the house with
I
the
don't want to hear.
intention of killing somebody. But I think that he saw Sherelle Davis on the road.
It's just like, is it Charles
He
Davis or
had
Charles?
time to, yeah
I keep
he
switching.
yeah
Is it
he
Lewis or David?
it's it's Lewis. I'm sorry, Sherelle
Okay.
Lewis,
I'll
Sherelle
say
Lewis.
next.
So
Apologize.
I think he saw Sherelle Lewis on the road. Um, I think he had adamant time to brake, swerve, turn. Like I think he there was a lot of different things he could have done besides um, running him over.
Yeah, that
And
like highway's a pretty big road. I'm assuming.
yeah, and
Like it has
even if it's
room to
a
pull his
two
car
lane,
behind.
even if it's a 2 lane or a 1 lane highway, which is possible. I have family in Alabama. I know what rural highways look like. There are some that are just 1 lane,
Ohio.
but still, if you got a pickup truck, I'm sure that you know the pickup truck can handle driving in the grass for a little bit to save a human life. Like I think that I'm pretty sure that it could, and I think
Would he
that
have done it
any
dog in the
other
road?
yeah, I would be
We don't
interested
know.
to see
He wouldn't
if
have
Matthew
get some
Martin,
dog.
yeah, and these are all
Like,
scenarios, and it's hard for us to like I said to prove anything beyond a reasonable doubt, but it's just kind of it's frustrating to keep on seeing black men getting killed at the hands of white men, black men, women, and children, honestly, getting killed at the hands of white men, and there not being any consequences for it. Um,
not only are there not any consequences, but people defend them.
yeah, the
Like young man, he was talking to his friend. Like he didn't just put out the comment that he just killed some nigga. He was talking to his friend, and his friend laughed about it too. Mr. Martin was the only one that laughed. His friend laughed too.
and
He's just like, I'm not gonna say he's just guilty of the murder, but
but he has
he's
the
guilty
mentality
of
that
potential
facilitates it.
crime.
Yeah,
And like I mentioned earlier, Mr. Martin's girlfriend took to Instagram to post this long paragraph about how Mr. Martin doesn't deserve all of the criticism that he's getting. That he doesn't he's not a bad guy. He loves everyone. That he wouldn't hurt a fly. He wouldn't do. He literally just killed a man and
and
then
laughed about
said
it,
it was just some nigger.
and
But
laughed about it.
you have the nerve, the audacity to sit here and try to tell me, the reader, the viewer, the person that knows all the facts, that he's a good guy. Maybe he is a good guy. I'm not saying that he's a terrible person, but that right there
He's
was
not
an
good. He's definitely not good to black people.
extreme version. I don't like. I'm not saying that I think he's a good person. I'm saying like to her, in her mind, maybe she thinks that he's a good person. What does that say about her? What does that say about her entire circle? What does that say about what does that say about the society that they're from? Because it must be very different than Trotwood. Because in Trotwood, if that same thing happened, because Trotwood is 70% black, he would have been in jail by now. Because we would have had police officers upset about it. We would have had people. The mayor would have been upset about it because we wouldn't allow something like that to happen. You have to, as a society, allow stuff like that to happen. And
And I think
we're not
it's allowed to
allowing.
happen way too
We're
much.
encouraging it. We're encouraging it by not giving them jail time and by
Defending them.
defending them because now they think that there's nothing wrong with it. The kid probably thinks that he was wrong for hitting him, but he thinks that he was just wrong for hitting him.
I really don't even think that, bro. I think that the kid thinks that Shrell was wrong for being in the road, and he shouldn't have been in the road. And and
Scenario.
it's interesting. It's interesting to hear people talk about it and see people say, "Oh well, he should have left that to somebody who's like I don't know, so official road picker cleaner upper like
Mr. Lewis
I
should
don't
have
know who's
be on
this.
the road.
Yeah, I
Like,
don't know
he
whose
was
job
making
it is to
every
pick up
car.
debris off the road, but I think it's like I think it's reasonable that a good Samaritan could stop and pick up some debris off the road. I don't think that that's far fetched. I don't think that it's the first time that this has ever happened, and I think that people have done it before and not gotten run over. So, and then called out their name after they've just been after they've just died, and then laughed at, as if their life was a joke, and then people wonder why, people of color are saying Black Lives Matter, you know, talking,
Doesn't matter, Mr. Martin.
yeah, the Black Lives didn't matter to him. Black Lives didn't
That's
matter
what,
to
like,
the people who
that is
killed Tamir
just so
Rice. Black Lives didn't matter to George Zimmerman. So Black Lives obviously don't matter to a lot of people, to a lot of people in the judicial system, in law enforcement, the people who are supposed to be keeping the society in check, and Black Lives don't matter to them. So if Black Lives don't matter to them, then like who do they matter to? Black people, like so.
like, I'm not saying that's not enough, but in the USA today, we are a minority, and we do not run the country. I don't care about the fact that we just had our first black president for the last 8 years, because right now we have a president that's he's undoing everything that President Obama did.
Yeah.
President Trump has set out on a mission to undermine everything that he did. In a way, I feel like that's sending a message to black people in America that any progress that we make could easily be undone. And we constantly are reminded of our past by these type of murders and these type of instances being allowed by society and not being taken.
And I think it's interesting that we've seen a rise in the documentation and publication of incidents like this with the inauguration of President Trump, and his slogan is "Make America Great Again," and a lot of people who don't support him, they ask the question, when was America great? And I've yet to hear somebody who supports him answer that question and be able to handle the response. I've had people say, "Oh, when Reagan was president, they were infusing drugs into the black community, and
started war on drugs."
yeah, and then disproportionately arresting black people for using the drugs that they infused into our communities, while white people were also doing the same exact, LSD and acid in rock concerts. So, and they weren't getting arrested. So it's like, when was America great, and where's the Trump administration trying to get America back to? That's what I've been trying to figure out for the past year. It remains to be seen. And I'm really disturbed and kind of anxious to see the answer to that question. Just because.
Great again, per se, because greatness is subjective. They called America great back in the day in 1776, but it wasn't great to our ancestors. It was probably the worst place on earth to be.
Yeah.
So greatness is relative, and it's all about perspective. And to us, America has never been great because it's 2018 and we can still get lynched.
Yeah, and that's what these killings are. Ultimately, is modern day lynchings. So
Definitely.
yeah, but yeah, we can talk about that on a different episode. But these lynchings, they need to stop. This mentality that black lives aren't as valuable as other lives, as animal lives, it seems like, needs to stop.
If he ran a dog over, he would have felt awful if he ran over a dog.
Yeah, so it's a systematic thing. It's a cultural thing, and it starts with having conversations like these and keeping it 100 with these people, and I say these people as in the people who don't think that there's a problem, because there is, and if you don't think there is one, then you're part of it. So look in the mirror, and we're gonna close it out with that. I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in. If you did tune in, let your friends know that we're gonna be posting videos every week. on our YouTube channel. We're going to be posting links and clips on our Facebook. That's coming soon. You can follow us on Twitter for updates, and we'll be retweeting different political accounts, and giving our political opinions on different stories that we might not address on the show, but that we do have an opinion on. So with that, if you guys, yeah, follow us on Twitter at Thisisamerica 13. And if you have any suggestions for topics or stories that you would like to see us cover, you can DM us. You can DM the This Is America account. You can DM me or Mark personally, or add us on Facebook or whatever. Yeah. So um, you know, give us some topics, give us some feedback, let us know what we can do better, and we'll keep on pushing out the content. So appreciate you, Mark, for joining me. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, and we'll catch y'all next week. Peace out.
Hey.